From the station working for you, this is WRTV News at Noon, streaming now.
They were back home, but only briefly. The Vice President and Second Lady doing their civic duty downtown this morning. We're going to take a closer look at their visit and get reaction to that coming up right here on the News at Noon. But before we get to voting and all things election today, we've got to talk about what's going on outside. Todd, we know we kind of have a mixed bag this Friday, so what's going on right now?
You know, it's potentially going to be a very active afternoon of weather for us here, Lauren, with storms and then falling temperatures. Out ahead of the main cold front, which is going to bring most of the action as far as thunderstorms go. We have a few isolated ones, some heavy rain just south of Franklin down into the Columbus area, and quite a bit of lightning here as well. This is not severe. It's just some heavy rain and a little bit of lightning. It's heading off towards the northeast, so Shelbyville here by 12:21, and then over into the St. Paul area as you work your way a little further to the south here as we get closer to the bottom of the hour. But that's like the only little band of rain that we have out ahead of the main front. So everybody else is seeing a general trend from mostly sunny now to what will be mostly cloudy skies, but then eventually this front will make its way through the area this afternoon, probably reaching far western locations by 2 o'clock and then making its way into the metro area as a broken line of showers and storms by about 4 o'clock, and then it moves off towards the east by 6 p.m. As that happens, that'll end the threat of any severe weather, with wind and hail being the main threats. But look at the temperatures. 74 right now in Indy, 52 in Gary, 40s in central Illinois. Our temperatures drastically drop later on today, going from 74 degrees at 2 p.m. all the way down to 53 degrees, Lauren, by 8 p.m. More on the storm chances coming up in just a few minutes.
Todd, thank you. Our coverage of Democracy 2020 continues. The Vice President and Second Lady were back in Indianapolis for a little bit for a very important visit, though. Our own Kelsey Anderson was there at the city-county building as the former governor and his wife cast their votes that they hope will keep them in the nation's capital for the next 4 years.
This morning, the polls were closed for about 20 minutes while Vice President Mike Pence and Second Lady Karen Pence cast their ballot inside the city-county building. Now they join over 1 million Hoosiers who have cast their vote early in the 2020 election. As Pence was leading, he was met with demonstrators from Indiana Nasty Women, one dressed as a fly, saying she was here to poke fun at the Vice President.
He comes here and disrupts our democratic process. And I think having a joke on Mike, you know, like the fly that took up residence on his head during the debate, is fair. I think that's completely fair for us to mock him, as long as we are also changing the focus from his rhetoric and campaign lies to a message of we are standing for democracy here. Here he comes.
So more polls in Indianapolis are going to open this weekend. And another thing that Hoosiers can use now in Marion County is the new website, indyvotetimes.org. There you can check the time on how long it's going to take you at your polling location. Working for you, Kelsey Anderson, WRTV.
Kelsey, thank you. The Pences not only in the Hoosiers, not the only Hoosiers rather, casting their ballots early. I want to take a look at the latest numbers from the Secretary of State's office. As of this morning, more than 402,000 Hoosiers have returned their absentee ballots to the clerk's office in the mail. Yesterday, of course, was the deadline to submit an application for an absentee ballot. Another 530,000 Hoosiers have joined Mike and Karen Pence in voting early in person. The Vice President and Second Lady still vote in Indiana, even though they live full-time out in Washington. Our own Ray Steele takes a look at why the Pences and many others have been voting that way legally for years.
Back home again in Indiana.
The votes of Mike and Karen Pence are now in. They won't be officially counted until Election Day. But you may be wondering why they still vote in Indiana when their full-time home is here. The Vice President's official residence at the Naval Observatory in Washington. The short answer is a lot of people who live in the nation's capital have voted in their original home states. Former Indiana Senator Evan Bayh lived and worked in Washington for almost 6 years after he left the Senate, and there was some controversy when he decided to be a Hoosier again, coming home to run for the Senate in 2016. He lost that race to Todd Young. Dick Lugar served 6 terms in the Senate. He lived full-time in the D.C. suburbs of Virginia. However, he always came back to Indiana to vote. He was criticized for that by the man who eventually beat him in the 2012 Republican primary, former state treasurer Richard Murdoch. No one has really criticized the vice president for voting here, since you obviously can't be vice president of the United States and live in Indiana at the same time. But some have questioned how the Pences are still able to use the governor's mansion as their official Indiana residence on voting forms, especially since the current governor also lists that house as his address. The Secretary of State's office tells us it is not illegal. They pointed WRTV to this part of Indiana state law that says you do not lose residency by reason of your absence on business of the United States. So far, no one has challenged the Pence's use of their former address, and as we saw, their voter registrations in Indiana remain active and valid. Working for you, Ray Steele, WRTV.
Ray, thank you. A nonprofit that works on protecting the rights of voters who vote by mail say it's concerned about voters not receiving their absentee ballots yet. Indiana Vote by Mail is a nonpartisan group that pushes for more people to be able to vote without leaving their home. President Barbara Tully says other states like Colorado and California use software that makes signature verification easier. She says Indiana can do better.
It's a huge concern. It's a huge concern. I mean, Indiana has a long way to go in terms of automating these processes. We don't have high-speed sorters here, so we don't have the infrastructure necessary. And Indiana really needs to look hard at ourselves and say, how do we get that infrastructure necessary to put in place so that we can run elections more smoothly?
Well, the group says if you haven't received your ballot in the mail by now, you should try either going to an early voting location to cast it in person. And some people who wanted to vote by mail for safety reasons due to COVID-19, we do have the newest numbers from the state health department. The number of new cases of COVID-19 is slightly lower today at 2,519. It's the fourth time over the last week that the state has had more than 2,000 new cases reported. 27 additional COVID-related deaths were also reported today. The positive test rate also continues to creep higher. The 7-day average for unique individuals is now at 13%. Hospitalizations were also up again, according to the health department. Indianapolis is inching closer to a milestone it never wanted to reach. Next, the latest crime that extends an already grim record for the city. And it's the type of ballot you may have to cast if you run into problems at the polls. Next on the News at Noon, we'll explain how a provisional ballot works if you end up having to use one. Todd.
And Lauren, a strong cold front's making its way towards central Indiana. Already some downpours across Indiana out ahead of this front. But once it comes through, potentially around to severe weather followed by tumbling temperatures. We'll talk all about it coming up in your WRTV Storm Team forecast when the News at Noon continues right here on WRTV.
Welcome back. Metro Police are still looking for suspects in the city's latest homicide. This all happened at a gas station on Indy's northwest side. Police were called out around 7 last night to the Marathon gas station on North High School Road and 38th Street. Officers say a man was found with gunshot wounds and taken to the hospital where he later died. So far, that's all police have said about the shooting. This was the 198th homicide in Indianapolis this year, as each homicide adds to the new record that was established earlier this month. Our WRTV digital team is staying on top of the crime right in your own neighborhood. You can access our interactive homicide map. There it shows you where the crimes took place and the status of each investigation. That map is on our website. Just go to WRTV.com. Well, they hit the streets for weeks over the summer calling for change. So coming up, we'll visit with those activists calling for social justice to see whether or not they see the change that they demanded. And let's take a live look outside right now. You can see clouds here over the campus of DePaul University. And Todd Clausen is breaking down our forecast when you could see rain in your own backyard today. That's all coming up right here on the News at Noon. Stick around. Welcome back. Following the death of George Floyd up in Minneapolis and the shooting death of Dre'Jon Reed by an IMPD officer here in Indianapolis, a city had weeks of protests and rallies over the summer. And demonstrators called for social and racial justice. And our Nicole Griffin is checking in with the community leaders who took to the streets, asking them if they believe that progress is being made here in Indianapolis.
I talked to one of the members of Faith in Indiana. They have been working all summer long, holding rallies and conversations and just trying to figure out concerns that community members have. They are calling the decision to now add 4 citizens to an internal policymaking board for IMPD a huge step in the right direction.
It means that we've heard the people, and now the City County Council has heard the people.
Reverend Shonda Nicole Gladden is a member of Faith in Indiana, a group that works with the community on issues like racial and economic equity.
With the killing of Aaron Bailey a few years ago, and then the more recent killing of Drayshawn Reed, the faith community has really been listening to our membership who's saying they're hurting. They're tired of what's going on.
This summer, IMPD worked with Faith in Indiana and other advocacy groups, taking their input to create the department's new use of force policy, which places an emphasis on de-escalation. IMPD Chief Randall Taylor called it a commitment to build community trust and develop stronger neighborhoods.
The current relationship needs work. I think, of course, that there are community members who may be in support of policing or their understanding of what policing is, but it needs work.
Jessica Louise with Indy 10 Black Lives Matter recognizes that adding 4 citizens to the new General Orders Board, along with 3 law enforcement officers, is a step in the right direction. But her organization still has demands.
They also elected to increase IMPD's budget to $261 million. We would rather see that money go towards community efforts like feeding and housing the community.
Reverend Gladden says the new General Orders Board will help restore trust between the community and the police department.
Because they'll see more and they'll be able to say more and how police engage with our community.
She says it will ensure accountability and put the public back in public safety. Working for you, Nicole Griffin, WRTV.
Nicole, thank you. And IMPD Chief Randall Taylor sent us this statement. He says, quote, from working to improve diversity and recruiting to the return to and subsequent expansion of community-based beat policing model to recent policy changes such as banning the dangerous practice of no-knock warrants and updating the department's use of force policy, IMPD is dedicated to serving in the ways our community asks of us, end quote. We have the chief's entire statement inside this story. Just go to WRTV.com. If you don't think your vote matters, well, this woman has a message for you. Earlene Hall Andrews of North Richland Hills, Texas, is 109 years old, and she cast her ballot earlier yesterday. And while she could have opted for the mail-in ballot due to her age, Andrews says that she's voted in person in every election possible, and so she wanted to do it in person as well. And we want to wish an early happy birthday because Miss Andrews also turns 110 this coming Monday. So happy birthday to her. Very impressive, Todd, that she got out there. I mean, I was complaining about my back hurting from standing in line for so long, so I have nothing to complain about.
And she looks so good as well for about to be 110
good for her.
Years old. Excellent. All right, outside, right, Lauren, things are going to start to change here pretty quickly throughout the afternoon hours. It's been a decent morning. I know some of you had some downpours and a little bit of lightning, but the clouds are now starting to win out, and temperatures are still very, very mild. In fact, we're close to 80 degrees in Terre Haute, 76 in Greencastle, 74 is the current temperature in Indian, 76 in Muncie, but the cooler edge of the air is now just starting to make its way into northern portions of the state. As far as the rain goes, there's this downpour that's just getting ready to pass north of downtown Shelbyville. A little bit of lightning. None of this is severe. Then there's a few downpours starting to pop up near Crawfordsville. But as we expand out, you'll see the bigger picture and this solid line of showers and storms from Chicago down into central Illinois. This is what's going to be making its way across the state as we go into the afternoon hours. The Storm Prediction Center hasn't really changed the storm threat map. Most of us under the marginal risk for severe weather becomes a slight risk here across northeastern portions of the state. That does include Peru as well as Muncie. That's where the best potential is for maybe a quick isolated tornado. For the rest of us, the main threat would be damaging wind and the potential for some hail. As this line of storms comes through, it's going to have these individual pockets of very heavy rainfall. There'll be some lightning mixed in as well. And it's these isolated pockets that'll have the best potential of producing some small hail across the area. So don't be shocked if you see it. The timing in the metro area probably around 3 to 4 o'clock. And then as we get into the later portions of the afternoon and early evening, the severe weather threat will shift off towards the east. The severe threat will come to an end by about 6 p.m. statewide. But we still will have some lingering showers across parts of the area as we go into the evening hours, so keep that in mind. As I mentioned, lightning, wind, and hail, the two main threats, that isolated tornado threat mainly across northern portions of the area. But look at the temperatures behind this front. This is not going to be a gradual decrease in temperatures. It is going to be a drastic and shocking change, like a flip of a switch, going from the 70s to 40s, as you see here in Chicago as well as Peoria. So as you plan your evening out, you have to have the heavier coat handy because our temperatures will be on the decline very, very quickly, and we should be into the 40s by the time we get to about 10 o'clock. And just keep in mind, those temperatures, that's for Indianapolis. It gets colder in western locations even a little bit quicker. Saturday starts off with some clouds. We end with lots of sunshine across the area, but notice the temperatures much, much cooler as we only get up to about 53 degrees for your afternoon high. And as we expand your 7-day planning forecast, I said yesterday you needed to soak that in because it was the best day we had in a long time. Well, look at this. Temperatures after today will be in the 50s for highs. Some spotty showers late in the day on Sunday. Most of the weekend is dry. The wettest day potentially going to be Monday, Lauren, as we deal with numerous showers moving through. And of course, stay with WRTV this afternoon for the latest as these storms move through.
All right, Todd, thank you. Well, if you go to the polls and you run into problems with your ID or your ballot, you may still be able to cast a vote, but election officials may say that you have to fill out what's known as a provisional ballot. Stephanie Liebergen with our partners at Newsy explains what that is.
What is a provisional ballot?
So a provisional ballot is a ballot for anyone who doesn't appear qualified at the moment, and then they are qualified or not after the election. And if they are qualified, then their vote is counted.
A variety of issues could prompt a voter to be handed a provisional ballot. Maybe they forgot their ID in a state where it's required, or their name isn't on the registration rolls.
Then you can ask, what do I need to do to get a regular ballot, to get my ballot counted now? And that's a conversation you can have on Election Day with the election officials.
Provisional ballots could also be used if a voter requested a mail-in ballot but decided to vote in person instead. In New Jersey, all registered voters will be sent a mail-in ballot, and anyone who chooses to vote in person will vote by using a provisional one.
We don't want voters walking away without having an opportunity to cast their ballot. A provisional ballot will be kept aside, it'll be put into an envelope, and after Election Day, after the rush of voting at the polls, they will take some steps to verify eligibility.
Stephanie Liebergen, Newsy, Miami.
And a reminder, we do have answers to all your questions about voting and the general election. All that information about early voting, plus profiles of all your candidates on your ballot, can be found at WRTV.com/election2020. Still ahead right here on the news at noon, some local kids are looking to make someone's day. We're going to take you down to Bedford for that Good News Friday story. Here for your lunch hour, you're watching WRTV, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. So the pandemic has been tough for everyone, but it's been especially taxing on seniors since they're more vulnerable to COVID-19, and that's caused restrictions on visitors to long-term care facilities. So some fifth grade students in Bedford wanted to let seniors know that they've not been forgotten.
We know that times like these can be lonely and scary and tough on everyone.
We just wanted to let you know
that we are here for you, even though we can't come visit. Or speak face
So teacher Brian Young at Lincoln Elementary School in Bedford says that his students wanted to make a video for the residents of all the nursing homes in Lawrence County. He says that his wife is also putting together letters and cards to send to them as well. And that is such a sweet idea, Todd. We're all feeling for the seniors who might be isolated right now, or people who are higher risk. So that's such a sweet message from those kids down in Bedford, Indiana.
Absolutely. All right. Big changes heading our way this afternoon. A cold front brings showers and storms. Some of these storms could be strong to possibly severe, with wind and hail being the two main threats. They should move into the metro area by about 3-4 o'clock. Behind that front, much, much colder. We're in the 70s right now. We'll be in the 50s and 40s later on this evening. So if you have Friday night plans, make sure you have the heavier coat. Your weekend's mainly dry but cool with highs in the 50s.
Todd, thank you, and thank you for joining us and making WRTV your choice for news. Come back tonight and join us for the news at 5. Have a great weekend. Be safe out there.